So my first rule is that I'm going to check my ego at the door, right? I'm going to come in here humble and try to give you guys a professional product and just have a little bit of fun on this rainy spring morning. What's your ground rule, Mike? Do you have any?
Yeah, I say let's check it twice and do it right the first time and be safe.
What do you mean by check it twice? Like with respect to a system that I have rigged over there?
Yeah, do a self-check buddy check. So go through it and make sure you have a closed system. That's preferable. And then I would look at one of you guys or Billy and say, hey, do you mind going behind me and making sure that all this is safe, you know? I think that's one of the #1 things to do is we want to be efficient, we want to be safe.
I think it's important to note that when you're on the trail and something does go wrong, typically heart rates start to get elevated, right? And that's when mistakes start to happen. And coming from the military realm, as you see it all the time on a battle drill, or something goes down and your heart rate gets up, and then that's when the mistakes start to happen. So with that, every time I run a system, I absolutely have a counterpart run my system and go over it, because I don't have that ego, right? Because as you know, in this business, if you do something wrong, you know, serious injury or death can even occur, because some of these systems are quite sophisticated and can be dangerous. What we're going to do is just talk about some of the recovery components here and some things to look for when you're choosing your recovery equipment. There's a lot out there on the market. They say the Overland realm here in the United States is going to parallel that of Australia. I don't know, those guys have been doing it for a long time, we'll see. But with that, there's a lot of equipment out there on the market, and a lot of people that want to sell you a lot of things. Go to Overland Expo. The first expo I went 2 years ago, I was overwhelmed, you know, like a kid on Christmas morning. Like, oh my God. And vendors will sell you, they'll try to sell you everything and anything under the sun, right? So always have that inquisitive mind and make sure, in fact, what they are selling you is going to be appropriate, and that all the proper testing and proofing and all that thing has been done.
You know, we can buy a lot of stuff, but a lot of stuff's not labeled. So what we're looking for are tried and tested labels on things that we know that have actually has a working load limit, and we're looking for that working load limit, and anything worth using is gonna have it on there. If it's not on there, you find it in your grandpa's barn or something, I don't recommend using it. So everything that we look at, even just something as simple as a screw pin bow shackle.
I thought that was a D-ring.
Well, everybody calls them different things, but this the technical name for this is a screw pin bow shackle. They make different types of shackles, bell shackles and everything else, but for the point of this class, we're looking for a working load limit on there. So it's WLL. This one is rated at 4 3/4 ton, right? So we all know a ton. 2,000 pounds, obviously, is a ton. So, and we're working with carabiners. I have some over there. Well, I'll show you guys later, but they are rated in kilonewtons. So every kilonewton is is rated at 225 pounds. So you can do the math. A lot of them are rated. Look at my son right here helping me out.
Let's bring
here.
him on. Yeah. He's more squared away than we are.
Thanks, Ty. We appreciate you. So these, we always use locking carabiners that screw up and lock. So we always want a closed system. We don't want anything coming apart on us. And I'll pass this around. So if you can see up here, look up here, you have kilonewtons this way. So there's an arrow this way. This one's rated at 24 kilonewtons this way and 7 kilonewtons this way. So 24 kilonewtons this way, and that would be shock load. So these are rated for snatch weight, something falling and it will catch. Who can do the math? Ty?
Don't ask the Marines up here. We're both Marines, by
yeah,
the
we're
way.
both former Marines, man. Yeah, math for Marines just didn't pay off. So 5,400 pounds. So this will catch 5,400 pounds falling, you know, this way. So that's pretty amazing. So I'll pass this around, look at it, get familiar with it. Once we use it and lock into something, we just want to screw it, lock it down.
Right, and Mike said something earlier about a data block, okay? So any type of, you know, snatch, rope, anything like that should come with a data block that gives you all the information that you need to know on it. So for instance, this strap right here is rated at 3,100 pounds in the vertical configuration, which is just straight on, okay? As a choker, it's rated at, let's see, 2480, and that's the choker configuration right there. And then it likes to be in the basket configuration. That's its strongest configuration, and that is, where did it go? 6,200 pounds in the basket configuration. Whenever you're rigging a system in a basket configuration, you always want to run the eyelets, one run right underneath each other, just like that. Okay? Okay, what we have here, who knows what this is? Who said pulley? Right, pulley block, okay? Words have meaning, meaning has action, action has consequences, okay? So this is in fact a pulley block. It came from the rigging industry. Okay, that's where we stole this from. This ARB pulley block, and they even get it wrong, stat block, right? 15,000 pounds, okay? One more thing I forgot, and Mike didn't catch me on it. When you're inspecting your equipment, any type of strap like this, you want to make sure that the stitching is in fact going in line with your piece of recovery equipment. It's going to keep it stronger. And most pieces of kit like this right here, you can actually look at the stitching and you know it's unserviceable if the stitching is in fact raised from the rope right there. That tells you that you probably need to cash it in and get another strap. Okay, so I'm going to ask a quick question with respect to electric winches, right? An electric winch is going to be what we're going to use for one of our demonstrations over there on the pretty sweet Jeep that our friends are letting us borrow for the demonstration. An electric winch, it's a 10,000 pound worn winch, synthetic line, okay? On what wrap of the drum is it rated for a 10,000 pound pull on a single line pull? Does anybody know?
11? Yeah.
It's on the first wrap of the drum. So essentially on the winch that we're going to be looking at over there, it should be anywhere from about 11 to 16 wraps. And that's your first layer of rope that's spooled on top of the drum. That is in fact the only freaking layer that you're going to get the 10,000 pound pull with respect to a single line pull, okay? Now, let's look at a statistic right here, okay? All right, so this is a 16,500 pound winch, all right? On the first wrap of the drum, it's in fact, how much? 16.5, all right? The second layer on the drum is degraded down to 15,279, not too bad, right? The third, 12,672. On the fourth layer, 10,824 pounds. So it starts catching up to itself exponentially, all right? So what is one of the things that you can do to, in fact, beef up or increase your ratings of your winch line? Yeah, so send it out all the way, but what if that's not possible? What if your only, anchor point is something that's 50 feet away and you got 100 feet of line? So what are we essentially doing? We break out our pulley block. What system are we building then? A double line pull, right?
Well, when I first started kind of looking at pulleys, I thought, in the old days they just called them simple machines, and I thought that there can't be anything to it. I run my winch line out, I put it around a pulley, and I come back, and it's going to give my winch the mechanical advantage. Well, it doesn't work that way, and I soon found out that I was very incorrect. So in order to have a mechanical advantage, a pulley has to be in motion. That doesn't mean the winch line is turning the actual wheel. The pulley physically has to be moving. So therefore, if I come out of my winch line, go to a tree saver with one pulley, and then back to my vehicle, that's called a redirect. That you're not giving your winch any mechanical advantage at all because this pulley's not in motion. And there's a couple of ways to measure that. If you have the mechanical advantage, say on a 2-to-1, and you have one pulley in motion, you can either count the ropes that are attached to that specific pulley, or if it's a 2-to-1, so you're going to use twice the winch line per movement of your vehicle, right? So you can actually, say if you wanted to put a piece of electrical tape 6 feet up from your winch and put a mark on the ground, when you pull in that 6 feet of winch line, your vehicle is only going to move 3 feet, right? So to truly build a 2-to-1, if you're by yourself with a tree, you're going to need 2 pulleys. So you go out to a tree with a tree saver, back to your vehicle, a pulley on your vehicle, and then back out to another stationary object, and now you have a 2-to-1, and you've reduced it by half. It's all about equipment, efficiency, longevity, and those types of things. So man, if you can spend a couple $100 on a couple of pulleys and save however much money
depending
you spend
on the pulley that you buy, they can
depending on the
become
pulleys that you buy,
expensive.
sure, you're doing your due diligence to take care of the tools that you're using.
Okay, before we cut away and go over to our systems over there, let's talk about the differences in steel cable versus synthetic line and some of the bullshit fallacies that are out there. So somebody give me an advantage of synthetic as opposed to steel.
It's lighter.
Okay, it's lighter. How much lighter?
I don't know.
About 6 times. The exchange is 1 to 6, so to speak, with respect to weight and strength. Okay. Now, what's an advantage of steel cable though?
Durability.
Okay. It's durable if what?
If maintained properly.
If maintained properly. And how would you maintain steel line, steel cable?
do believe you run it out
Yep.
often.
Yeah,
right?
you want to
Make
inspect
sure
it. What are you looking
splinters,
for when you inspect your line?
No splinters in your
Okay.
steel.
No rust.
No rust. kinks.
Okay. Frays, kinks. Kinks is a big thing. Okay, because that can shock load the shit out of the system when you're running it. So kerosene, actually, kerosene is a way that you can clean your steel line. What's another advantage of steel line as opposed to synthetic? Generally, it's cheaper, right? And again, man, especially with the Overland market starting to explode now, there's a lot of things out there that are pretty expensive. So there's always going to be to the debate from old school guys. They'll pick a screw pin bow shackle over a synthetic line any day. But if you start understanding what the strengths and weaknesses and the true pro-con analysis really is, just make an educated decision. Don't just buy synthetic line because it's super sexy and it's cool and you want the latest and greatest that's out there. There are plenty of advantages. We talked about the weight to strength ratio. Okay, that's definitely an advantage. It's lighter. That's another advantage, especially as we start adding tons of stuff on top of our vehicles. Synthetic line, what's one more advantage to it? Especially, I'll give you a hint with respect to it breaking apart. Okay, who thinks synthetic line is just going to lay down flat under a pretty hard pull and just go to the ground like it's cool? Anybody? There's a lot of people that'll tell you synthetic line is just going to lay down. It does not lay down. It will come at you like a rocket. It'll hurt you. It's probably not going to kill you like steel cable can, but it does have some momentum and velocity behind it. All right. So with that steel cable, because the way that it's braided, essentially when you still see steel cable, help me out.
Steel cable.
When you see steel cable break apart, it generally is going to be whipping, and it's attacking anything in its path. And again, you guys just go out there and YouTube it, Google it, man. You'll see some pretty gruesome stuff out there as well with it. But essentially that steel cable is going to spiral because of the way the load and the way that it is actually wrapped into itself. What would you call that? The twist or the lay of it? The lay of the cable?
Yeah, it's going to keep its memory there for sure.
Okay. What we'll start with is we'll cover down on the mechanical high lift winching. Make sure everybody's up to speed with that, and then we'll go to electric winching.
So the way over here, someone asked me to give a high lift jack class. What is your name?
Jason.
All right, Jason. Well, it's been a while since I've been over it, so it's gonna be kind of an impromptu class, but I'll do my best here. But we use them for mainly three things for winching. We use them for jacking and like putting cribbing under tires, things like almost building like max tracks, if you will, something like that. And like a jack and cast is what we call it. So he would
Spreading
essentially
as well, Mike.
and spreading. Yep. So that's one of the new like jaws of life kind of thing. So we're using them for spreading. So
Does high lift recommend that you use it for changing a tire, in fact?
they do not. So I'm sure most of you that carry these probably have read the labels, gone online and read your owner's manual. They are not supposed to be used for changing tires. So, you know, take that for what it is. And if everybody looks, there's two little narrow notches in here that allow, as you pull the handle down, to climb up. But what really is holding the weight, according to high lift, is at least 80 pounds of pressure once you have weight on here will keep this thing up. And it actually binds on the bar itself. So that it's a mechanism of just holding itself on the bar, and the pins will climb up. So as you can see, we're going click to click. As you're going up, one pin is releasing, helping you climb up. And if you guys watch it do that closely, you'll see that it's canted back. It's all shifted back. That's what's holding the load. That's why high lift has kind of a standard of 80 pounds, because if it doesn't have 80 pounds, what will it do? I'm sure you guys have all looked. Yeah, it drops. Yeah, so that's super dangerous. It reverses the same way, so it's probably going to fall. There's nothing on it right now. I'll try to hold it up here, but it would walk back down the bar the exact same way. So right now it's going to fall. There's no weight on it at all to reverse it. We store it with your lever up, so it can't ride as easily.
Okay, so the high lift, in fact, as you get to the last foot of the high lift jack, it starts reducing in actual capacity. So if you're in a situation where you have a vehicle that has a lot of travel on it, I know long travel is super cool out here, the last foot of the jack is actually going to be degraded from the true capability of the jack with respect to its weight. Now, so the 60-inch it gives you obviously another 12 inches as well to play with. Tommy and I were racing 36 hours of Uwari, the inaugural 36 Uwari, and all we brought was two 48-inch high lift jacks. In his 80 series, long travel in the rear, there was a scenario where we were doing a jack and stack of all four wheels, and we couldn't get it because the geometry wasn't right. The 48-inch just wasn't long enough to do it, and you could only use, you know, certain pieces of recovery kit out there. So my recommendation is, it doesn't matter what you have, what vehicle that you have, just go ahead and buy the 60.
How we have this set up, we love closed systems.
What do you mean by closed?
So everything has a safety. So this is a closed system. There's no grab hooks or anything that can come undone, especially when there's slack on the rope. So if at all possible, we love a closed system. So we have found the anchor point. This is our anchor vehicle, and this is our stuck vehicle, right? So we ran a tree saver, a strap off here. This is a closed system here. I've checked the rating of this carabiner, and I'm gonna run this high lift jack. So on this side, this serves two purposes here. This can hold my winch line down, because if you imagine, once I get halfway up, you're gonna be such at an angle trying to use your high lift jack. So you can use a carabiner here to hold this, and it will just ride right along. But plus, once you release the tension and come back down, it keeps your runner from falling off the end of your bar here, right? Does everybody copy? Mm-hmm. Good to go. So this is another safety measure here. So it's just draped over here. I have this carabiner locking this in. So we're not using this because it's not rated per high lift, correct? Everybody knows that? Yep. So as we move down, we have our weight on the winch line extension, just in case it breaks. Hopefully that helps it just fall. So everybody wants to come down here.
Under a load with the high lift, it is going to just fall down, but under an electric winch, it's not going to just fall flat down. I promise you that.
So I'm going to run it from this side over here, so you're good there. So there's a safety zone, obviously, when we're winching, especially with steel cable. But we all know that this is probably going to fall if it breaks under a high lift jack, but under extreme tension, it's going to recoil somewhere. Okay, that tension's going to really hurt somebody, especially if it's steel. So there's a safety zone, typically just as long as your winch line. So if you're winching 20 feet, make sure guys are back 20 feet. You guys don't have to go anywhere right now, just for sake of the instruction. So essentially, I'm just going to try, if there was more slack, once your locking lever's up, you can pull on this and it will pick up that additional slack. Does everybody understand that? Okay. So we're working from click to click. I'm not going to try to get down in here. I'm just click to click. And I'm already pulling my vehicle. Of course, it's not really stuck. And I'm going to run it up as far as I can.
It or not, but most of the gloves they have out nowadays are really nice and sleek, and they have this nice little strap that keeps them from coming off. What could be the danger of that when messing with an electric winch? Could get caught in the line, and it's going to pull your hand right into it, right? So if you don't want to cut up your gloves, usually on most of mine I cut it, but I like to show it for demonstration. It's just take it off and then tuck it inside itself, just like that. That way if it does grab upon itself, it can pull the glove clearly off. I like the nice thin leather gloves like Mike has right there. I have a pair, but I want to show off my cool BF Goodrich gloves. Nah, just kidding. Talk about the winch and some of the intricacies associated with it, and I can also explain some of the things that we touched on earlier, okay? So this is an electric winch right here. This one's nice and pretty, it's brand new. The guys from Overland Pioneers were kind enough to loan us their vehicle and equipment for display, and also for the class right here. So we talked earlier about the first layer of wraps on the drum, and if everybody brings it in, you can in fact see the drum right here, and then you can note that this is in fact the first layer of wraps on the drum. And being a VR10S, what's it rated at? 10,000 pounds, right? Okay, so a quick question for you guys. If we're stuck, we identify our anchor point, and we're gonna run line up to go ahead and build our system. Is it cool for me just to spool out, man, and just run that winch all the way out? What do you think?
Yes.
That's fast, isn't it? Mr. Michael Compton, why would you recommend not doing such?
Well, so once again, it's preservation of equipment. So you don't want to heat up your winch and the motor in your winch. So, it's good to go in spurts and just let it cool down and give it a rest, because it will heat up quickly. Gives you a 2-to-1 mechanical advantage because the pulley is in motion, right?
Okay, with that, right? So So we have a double line pull. We know that right now. We're on the first layer of the drum. It's a 10,000 pound winch. What are we at right now with respect to pounds? 20,000. Who said 20,000? You are correct, sir. All right. So this is an advanced winching class, right? Is this taboo? What do we got going on here? Somebody tell me what strap this is. Kinetic strap. Ah. How many people were taught here never to use a kinetic type rope or strap in a static or winching recovery type situation? I would argue back in the day that was the standard.
There's several scenarios you'd use it for, but you would typically use it to also gain that extra distance. So once everything stops, it's still gradually pulling you. So it's not like a rubber band where you expand it and it retracts rapidly. It's a slow retraction. It's a controlled retraction. And it's that constant resistance on your vehicle as you're trying to climb out.
Right.
So, Billy and I work a lot with explosives and stuff, and kind of our joke is P for plenty. So when we're breaching or something, we add a lot and just call it good. We know it's going to get through what we want. It's not the same out here, because anytime you have a lot of force, heavy metal, people standing around, like people could get injured, right? So you're not just jumping behind the wheel, giving it some gas and hoping that rope just pulls you out.
All right, but here's the scenario, okay? We have this gnarly ass hill right here, this hill climb that's nice and muddy. And let's say we also have a bunch of rock that's on that hill. So it's essentially a failed hill climb, steep hill climb with a bunch of off-camber rocks and stuff on that right now. So what's the rub, and why did we introduce it into a static or winching type recovery? Has anybody seen a winch shock load before? Okay, so let me give you a hypothetical. Me and Tommy are racing 36 hours of Uwari. We had a hill like this with a bunch of rocks. We're running steel cable in the 80 series, okay? We're running a double line pull. As that vehicle starts pulling up the hill and hitting rocks and roots and all that stuff, essentially the winch line is loosening and tightening, all right? And anytime you have that effect with a winch behind it, you can get something called shock loading, where all of a sudden it's pulling, it stops, and then it pulls really hard. So you'll get that whipping effect, essentially, if you will. Well, that's essentially what happened to Tommy and ours. He was running a tough stuff winch. We were still poor back then, right? And so essentially we created a bird's nest inside of that winch drum, and we could not get it to release. And so we were done. So introducing a kinetic strap into this type of stuck situation right there, you're mitigating your risk for a shock load. So knowing what we know now about looking at data blocks and all that good stuff, looking at this system, we have a screw pin bow shackle that's essentially tied to the recovery point on the front of the FJ Cruiser there, onto the kinetic strap. All right, you guys don't know this because you didn't read it earlier, but this is an 18,000 pound kinetic strap, okay? Doubled upon itself in that configuration, all right? This soft shackle right here, let's see, working load limit, 11,800 pounds, all right? Our pulley block, 30,000 pound braking strength, all right? Our synthetic line, this isn't my line, I don't know what it's rated at, so you guys tell me, what do you think? This is a closed loop system, right? What do you think would fail first? The screw pin bow shackle, what was that, 4?
Like 4 3/4, I believe.
Okay, so do the math, times 2,000 pounds.
You'd also have to look at your owner's manual and see what this recovery point is actually rated. Yeah. So, considering all those factors, what do you guys think though? It's probably the one thing that's probably your weakest link here. Soft shackle?
A rope.
Could be. Could be that or your screw pin bow shackle, depending on its working load limit, okay? And also with every piece of standard, especially with steel and all that good stuff within the rigging industry, right? So you have your, and with chain as well, you have your working load limit, your safe load limit, and then your, what is it, your braking strength of it?
Yeah, which is usually 4 to 7 times your working load limit. I'm not sure. But how far do you screw it all the way in? Do you screw it all the way in and lock it?
And then back it off.
You back it off just a quarter turn or something just to loosen it up, because it will bind up. You won't be able to get it out. And there's a lot of guys that will argue in the industry that hole is there to put a screwdriver or something in to break it loose, but you're going to mitigate all that by just backing it off a little bit.
However, in its truest form, rigged up for industry standard, it is supposed to be lashed all the way down, but it's not going to hurt you just to back it off a quarter turn. The standard in the industry essentially is a minimum of 7 wraps for cable steel cable and 11 wraps for synthetic. And you can see right here, we're on the first layer of the drum, but if you count the wraps all the way from the drum here, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, about 14 wraps on the drum. Anytime you're rigging up your system, what I like to do with my controller is go ahead and run a safety bite on it. That way, if I get flustered behind the wheel and I start yanking on my winch apparatus, it's not going to pull it from the connector right there. So create a safety relief. Always keep your winch line dressed down, right? So keep everything nice and clean. You know where it's at. It's not going to get fouled. You might be in a heavily foliaged area where it could get snagged and pulled out as well. I'll also come over and I'll run another lazy bite around my side view mirror and then bring the controller, in fact, into the car itself, okay? So just keeping everything nice and tidy from there. Soft shackles, okay? There's a couple ways to rig the soft shackle that are good for business. So if you look at the system right here, we're basically running the winch line all the way to the factory recovery point in the bumper, all right? And if you see the soft shackle, it's actually coming over the head of it and then it's pulling on the neck, all right? This is how you want it to be rigged up so that it's not in fact able to pull the head out from the noose that it's rigged through right there. So that's always the way that you want to see your soft shackle rigged up. So you spool it in and then you lock it into place. When you lock it into place, give that winch line just a little bit of tug, making sure it is in fact engaged. Oftentimes you'll hear that audible click that in fact means it is properly engaged. Okay, so give it a nice little tug. Check out your system one more time, make sure it's squared away, everything's good to go, and then we'll run it.
I would obviously have you guys back a lot further, but you're fine where you are for this scenario. This vehicle's not really stuck, so you know there's not going to be a whole lot of tension on it. So essentially what I'm going to do is communicate with both guys. I'm going to make sure he's ready to go. If he's looking at me, Scott! Got a thumbs up. You got a thumbs up. And I'm just going to start winching in. Now I don't have to sit here all day and do this. Once I give him a command, it's whatever you work out between your buddies, you communicate that. It's whatever you work out between you and your buddies, but you know, you'll see guys, man, they'll be here all day because it's a long. Just tell him what you want him to do, let him do it. And then I'm going to stop. And if I think we're pretty much there, I may bump him a little bit. So he's counting the number of bumps that I'm giving him, and I'm not just standing up here kind of doing whatever. You know, if like our weighted strap is holding this winch line down, and as he's winching in, I notice that it's getting close to my winch, okay? So I would stop both of them like this, and I would walk over, I'm going hands on. He's gonna show me that he doesn't have the controller in his hand anymore, and his hands are out the window. That tells me it's safe to go ahead and do whatever I need to do here. I can work on this knowing that I'm good to go there. Some guys like to come up and unplug the controller. You know, that's not a bad idea either. It's whatever communication that you guys have between the guy on the ground and the guy operating the winch. So you can unhook him here, do whatever you need to do, slide your weight back out a little ways, and then we're going back on it here. I'm gonna get a thumbs up after I worked on it. I get a thumbs up, and I'm gonna start winching in.
Knock it down, right? So at that point, we're done with the recovery. We'd give knock it down, okay? We would just bump out from there a couple times, release the slack, break it down. And we're gonna keep the system rigged up for you guys to get pictures or whatever, or to ask questions. But essentially at that point, what we're gonna do is, because we need the wrap to be nice and tight on the winch drum as well, is we're gonna control the winch line all the way in while the other operator is in fact running the winch. So we'll go hand over hand all the way down, watching the winch and what it's doing, watching the lay of the line, okay, all the way until we get it in nice and secure. Okay, so Mike's getting ready to run the controller in. A couple things that we're doing right here. A lot of guys right now want to sell you an aftermarket bumper that's completely encased because it looks pretty, right? And the problem with that though is in fact you can't see your winch actually working. So whether you're actually bringing the winch line in while the winch is actually on its duty cycle, it's working, you want to see what the winch is doing. Not only do you want to see it, you want to listen, because you can hear how many amps that it's drawing and how hard the winch is in fact actually working. So look at your owner's manual to find out the duty cycle of the winch and how often you should put it on that rest cycle. And then after a while with your winch, you'll just start to understand the capabilities and intricacies of it, i.e. the noises that you're talking about and how hard in fact she's actually working. All right, so as Mike is going to start bringing this winch line in, basically I'm just going hand over hand, keeping freaking friction and keeping the tension applied to the drum as it's winding it up, and hopefully I'll get a nice tight wind on the drum as well. I don't want to be so close, in fact, to where it could become a safety hazard to where my hand could end up, in fact, inside the drum. That's what I want to stay away from. But I want to be close enough that I can actually see and effectively manage the winch line. So for me, with this bumper and the winch being open and exposed, this is perfect for me. I can get good geometry on it and then control the line effectively as we're spooling it in, okay? So Mike, on you, buddy. And at this point, once he gets close, that would be an effective point to start giving him the bump, okay?
Other way.
Helps together out.
So Jess asked a question, what do we recommend the rated capacity of our winch be if I'm shopping for a winch? You know, and I have, say, a 5,000 pound vehicle. You know, what kind of winch would I want to buy? What's the weight capacity on it? 1.5, so you want 1.5 times your vehicle weight. That'd be
That's a
safe.
good rule of thumb, but
Yep.
think about also in terms of, you know, what is your weight going to be at expedition weight? What I mean by that is after we add all the shit that we really don't need on our rigs, or pull the trailers that we really don't need as well behind us to carry all of our egos and everything else, right? So think about expedition weight, what you're actually carrying, and then make your decision off of there.